Everyone should be able to believe in whoever or whatever they want to believe in. There's not one true God and there is no untrue God. That's a very common mainstream idea that exists today. But it's one that I reject because, frankly, it just doesn't make sense. One-third of U.S. adults believe in some higher being, some higher power, but not the one that's described in the Bible. Instead, they believe that we should be able to concoct for ourselves who God is for me and you, who God is for you. But what that idea promotes is that you're in charge of who God is. And there's a glaring problem with that. You see, a higher being or a higher power is what determines what is and what isn't. Hence the name higher being or higher power, right? It's the ultimate authoritative figure. So how can we, lower beings with less power, determine what this higher being is? When you get down to it, there's really only one answer. I'm taking what's valuable, what I believe is right or wrong, what I believe is good or bad for me, and I'm replacing my own thoughts, my own values, in essence replacing myself with that higher being. I'm the higher being. I'm the ultimate authority. I snatch the words right out of God's burning bush mouth and I assign them to myself. I say, I am who am. I am the higher being. I am the ultimate authority. And again, that just doesn't make sense. So, for example, let's look at a parent and a child. When a parent has a child, the parent names the child, tells the child what he or she can do, where he or she can go, who he or she can be with, what time you have to come back, what you're allowed to do past a certain time. The child doesn't get to tell the parent, parent, here's your name. Mom, Dad, here's what you can do today. Now, I know that we've all been at the store before, out in public somewhere, where you've seen instances where like the children are almost controlling the parents, like telling the parents what they're going to do. And so if we're being honest, I think to some extent we at least stop and say to ourselves like, oh, that, at least, hey, at minimum we're saying this. That kid is not polite, that kid is not respectful, that kid is ill-mannered, right? And at worst we're saying, gosh, maybe that kid's going to grow up to be selfish or entitled and so on. And we don't have to look very far to see how destructive selfishness and entitlement are. Again, the parent gets to tell the child what is and what isn't. The child doesn't tell the parent because the parent is the authority, the child is not. You know, what's interesting is that we try to decide what's good and bad, and we struggle with that all the time. If we look at the beginning of the Bible in the book of Genesis, right? God created the whole world. He created everything in it. Then he creates us, and then he gives us authority over it all. He goes, here you go, have it. Do good with it. He said we could have it all except for one thing, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So if God tells us himself, like, you're not equipped to determine what is good and what is bad on your own, right? Because we all, left to ourselves, would determine different things are good for me, good for you, bad for me. Like they would be conflicting. And so how can we be left, really, to accurately discern, okay, here's what's good, here's what's right, here's what's true, here's what's untrue? Because that's how we formulate, according to this idea, believe in whatever you want to believe in, that's how we would formulate what or who God is. And this is a personal favorite here. Bishop Fulton Sheen, he said, if you don't worship God, then 9 times out of 10 you worship yourself. So paradoxically, the higher you place yourself, the more authority you give yourself, the more you become like the ill-mannered child. The higher you are, the lower you really are. But the Christian God says the lower that you place yourself, right? Be a servant, help others, give yourself up to other people, for other people, right? Place yourself lower. The lower you place yourself, then the higher I will raise you. And once we break past that barrier and accept the fact that I can't determine who God is, if I'm accurately going to understand who God is, then it's only based upon who God has revealed himself to be. And again, once you break past that barrier, that variable, and you accept that truth, then it's a little bit easier to say, okay, here's who God is not. And by saying who God is not, you're getting closer to understanding who God is. And once you do that, once you gain that understanding for yourself better, then it's easier to go out and humbly share the truth, beauty, and goodness of the Catholic Christian faith for all to enjoy. I'm Dallas. Have a blessed day.